Rama, Hari Hari. Isn't this like a little bit too? Shouldn't it go this way a little bit? I see. Let's see what this sounds like. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Loud Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giridhari Jaya Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giridhari Jaya Giridhari Yasodanandana Rajajananjana Yasodanandana Rajajananjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Manachari Yamunatira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giridhari Jaya Girivaradari. Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari. Jaya Girivaradari. Sudanandana Rajajananjana. Yashodanandana Rajajananjana. Yashodanandana Rajajananjana. Yatira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Diyari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari. Jaya Girivaradari. Nandana Rajajananjana. Yashodanandana Rajajananjana. Yashodanandana Rajajananjana. Yashodanandana Rajajananjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramamsa Pivajakacharya Astotartata Shri Shriman Nityajala Pravishnam is Divine Grace Shilabhai Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ISKCON's BBD founder Acharya Jagadguru Bhatita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhāgavatam Ki Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki or Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. 35, 34. What verse did not the Bhāgavatam give he gave the verse on 34, so today it's 35. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naramchava Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Vitojayam Adiraya Nastrapeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamash Loke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishti. Probably should raise this up because my voice is not going to allow me to be loud. Reading from the Srimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 19, The Killing of the Demon Hiranyaksha, Text 35. Yo Gajendram Jasa Grastam Yayantam Charanam Bhujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad Trutam Yogajendram Jasagrastam Dhyayantam Charanambujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad Trutam Yogajendram Jasagrastam Dhyayantam Charanambujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad Trutam. Okay.
Yogajendram Jashagrastam Dhyayantam Charanambujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad Trutam Yogajendram Jashagrastam Dhyayantam Charanambujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad Yogajendram Jashagrastam Dhyayantam Charanambujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad Yogajendram Jashagrastam Dhyayantam Charanambujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Kritrato Mochayad
Yo, or Ya, he who, Gaja Indram, the king of elephants, Chasa, an alligator, Grastam, attacked by Dhyayantam, meditating upon. Charana, feet. Ambujam, lotus. Proshantinam, while crying. Karenunam, the female elephants. Prichrata, from danger. Amochayat, delivered. Chutam, quickly. The personality of Godhead delivered the king of the elephants, who was attacked by an alligator and who meditated upon the lotus feet of the Lord. At that time, the female elephants who accompanied him were crying, and the Lord saved them from the impending danger. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The example of the elephant in danger who was saved by the Supreme Lord is especially cited here because even if one is an animal, he can approach the personality of Godhead in devotional service, whereas even a demigod cannot approach the Supreme Person unless he is a devotee. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unlitam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabinam Nyena Bhutale Swayam Bhagadamayam Dadati Svapadantingam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utabadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vidam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashaka Vedamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pide Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namos Jute Jayatam Surto Pangor Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohan. You can hear me? I'm not going to go louder than this. Dibyad Bindiranya Kalpajumada Shrimad Ratnagara Singha Sanasto Shrimad Radha Shilagovinda Devo Prastalabi Savyamanu Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Bhatta Tatasti Taha Karshan Venu Swanar Gopir Gopinatha Shri Estuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Brindavaneshvari Vishamanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare Yogijendram Jasagrastam Yayantam Charanam Bhujam Kroshantinam Karenunam Krichito Mochayed Jutam. The personality of Godhead delivered the king of the elephants, who was attacked by an alligator, and who meditated upon the lotus feet of the Lord. At that time, the female elephants who accompanied him were crying, and the Lord saved them from the impending danger. So, this is kind of the beginning of the Bhāgavatam, setting the stage for Shukadeva Goswami in the second canto. The point here is this is an extraordinary Falshruti series of verses, benedictory and revelatory verses, the power and potency of hearing the Lord's pastimes. In the chapter, the Pandavas retire timely, it's described at the end that anyone who hears this chapter, extraordinary merit is placed upon them, and they can ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. So, in our readings, these Falshruti means the fruit giving. What is the sublime conclusion of devotional service, of which hearing and chanting is preliminary, primary, and foundational throughout. So this is a source of great encouragement. And Sutta Goswami is so ecstatic about this that he speaks like 6, 7, or 8 verses just about the false Shruti. Shata Vidura, the great devotee of the Lord, achieved transcendental bliss by hearing that narration of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the authoritative source of the sage, Koshrava, Maitreya, and he was very pleased. And yesterday's verse, very important, is understanding the narrations about the pure devotees of the Lord are just as good, if not even better, than hearing directly the pastimes of the Lord. And the reason given, because in this case the Pandavas had a direct relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You can hear the memories of devotees who were fortunate enough to have ample or generous or a lot of Prabhupada's association, and seeing the pure devotee, seeing Srila Prabhupada from many different angles of vision that would demonstrate his multifaceted, transcendental personality. Just 2022, Siddhanta Prabhu and Pancharatna Prabhu put together a bi-weekly or every Ekadasi, 26 bi-weeklies, 26 Ekadasis in a year, the 26 qualities of a devotee. And everything in relationship to Srila Prabhupada, it was very clear that he's 100%, if not more. What could be more than 100%? 100% is everything. We say 110%, but that really is a mathematical impossibility, right? And it is Krishna's system. They even put at the beginning of volume 1 of the Prabhupada Lilamrita, Lifetime in Preparation, Krishna's statement to Arjuna in the Adi Parva section of the Mahabharata: those who say they are my devotees directly are not my devotees, but those who are devotees of my devotees, they are actually my devotees. What to speak of hearing the pastimes of the Lord, whose chest is marked with Srivatsa? Many people take transcendental pleasure even in hearing of the works and deeds of the devotees, whose fame is immortal. So we see how Siddhanta Prabhu had the wherewithal or hindsight to start interviewing Srila Prabhupada's disciples some 30 or more years ago, and then now the volume of audio and visual testimonies that we have is quite substantial, and certainly this will be a very, very important resource for coming generations of devotees to help them understand the sublime personality of such an empowered devotee as Srila Prabhupada. And in the purport yesterday, Prabhupada makes this statement: Bhāgavatam literally means the pastimes of the Lord and the Lord's devotees. Both types of pastimes pertain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because the devotees' pastimes are in relationship with Him. Prabhupada even said that the present International Society for Krishna Consciousness is the continuation or part, or it is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan pastimes. Not just the Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, non-different than Krishna, non-different than Vasudev, he who lives in every place, in every time, in every place, in every circumstance. There's a very triumphant purport that's maybe 10 or more pages long in the second canto, and Srila Prabhupada said, let them be qualified or not, let them be educated or not, all in any time, in any place, devotional service. So it's not that just devotional service in the Bengali villages 500 years ago is the proper place for the Sankirtan movement or devotional service. Before there was electricity, before there was these things. In all times, in all places and circumstances. There's one chapter in the 4th volume of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, which covers the years, the early 1970s, where Prabhupada's movement expanded very, very rapidly all over the world, and it's called Jet Age Pariv Jakacharya. So Srila Prabhupada has shown how devotional service can be practiced by everyone, anywhere in this so-called modern age. And it will be the responsibility of subsequent generations of devotees to do the same. And the tendency in Kali Yuga for compromise and confusion based upon what is actual Siddhanta, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. More responsibility will be given for those who take responsibility for leading Lord Chaitanya's movement to adhere very strictly to the principles so that the sampradaya doesn't become compromised, yet at the same time being intelligent enough how to apply Krishna consciousness according to time, place, person, candidate, circumstance. What grateful soul is there that would not render his loving service to such a great master as the personality of Godhead? The Lord can be easily pleased by spotless devotees who resort exclusively to him for protection, though the unrighteous man finds it difficult to propitiate him. Prabhupada was being asked, can Krishna force us to surrender? And Prabhupada said, relating to his own situation, or his own experience, yes. But that's a rare situation. Generally, Krishna will not force, and that's discussed in the second to last 88th chapter of the 10th canto, Yasyaham Anugranami, when I'm especially favorable to a devotee who deep in his heart is attached to me in devotional service, yet at the same time is stubbornly clinging to material attachment. I create a situation to frustrate his material plans or material safeguards. And I leave him in a position where he's forced to take absolute exclusive shelter of me and me alone. And when that happens, the devotee achieves his complete and final and 100% desired happiness. O Brahmana, anyone who hears, chants, or takes pleasure in the wonderful narration of the killing of the Hiranyaksha demon by the Lord, who appeared as the first boar in order to deliver the world, is at once relieved of the results of sinful activities, even the killing of a Brahmana. And Prabhupada would, many times throughout the Bhāgavatam and its purports, caution us not to think that one particular type or one particular pastime of the Lord is superior to another. Particularly, there's a sahajiya tendency to think that the Lord's pastimes with the gopis in the transcendental Madhurya Ras are superior, and Prabhupada uses the word in the first canto in relation to fighting with Bhishma Deva, bellicose pastimes, fighting. And Prabhupada says that hearing of the Lord's pastimes with the gopis and hearing about the Lord's fighting or guiding Arjuna and the Pandavas on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is non-different and is as good as any other devotional service. Of course, at the same time, in the talks between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, it's understood from a higher qualified transcendental perspective of an authorized devotee, there are higher and higher levels of devotional service, and that's based upon how Krishna will be pleased more and more. Srila Prabhupada gave the sutra on Radhastami here in New York, 1966. Srimati Radharani is the best devotee because she loves Krishna the most. Prabhupada, in the Adi Lila chapter 4, no one can excel the devotional service of Srimati Radharani. Indeed, she is Bhakti Devi. You are the source of devotion. She is the source of devotion for everyone. And for a devotee who is actually established in devotional service means that he has renovated his eternal relationship with Krishna. He is participating 24 hours a day in his eternal relationship with Krishna and with the appropriate devotees in various categories that are also serving in that similar mood. In the essence of all advice, in association with the devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Srila Prabhupada was always concentrated and focused on preaching Krishna consciousness in accord with what would be best for the individuals or the collective group who he was speaking with. He was very, very private and chaste in revealing his inner ecstasies, his actual position. Because the neophyte or the immature devotee should not be exposed to these things, lest the risk and likelihood of making misappropriate appraisals and material desire, material motivation is usually based on wanting to prove oneself to be something that one's not, for the sake of name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction. So, all right, let me present to everyone that I am the greatest devotee because I'm into the greatest thing, and and etc., etc. You can read Srila Prabhupada and what to speak of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's scathing critique of the mentality and motivation of the Prakrita Sahajiyas, and we certainly don't want to fall into that category. There's the memoir of Mukunda, who, when the first Mridanga arrived in San Francisco in the early part of 1967, he had asked Srila Prabhupada for a lesson. And Prabhupada was giving him the very, very basic beats. And Mukunda Maharaj now was having a little difficulty. He had to get maybe several instructions from Srila Prabhupada on the same thing. Finally, he was getting the hang of it, playing the beats awkwardly, and then he noticed that Srila Prabhupada had his eyes closed and was just standing behind him and just relishing and just so much enjoying. And he thought, here's an accomplished pure devotee, a spiritual, a great master, and he's enjoying me, a complete neophyte, just doing the most elementary thing. And so Mukunda Maharaj, he says that I could realize by this that Prabhupada was a great master. And it was the pertinent teaching. He just wanted to reach people and help everyone develop. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is teaching us, to also be in that frame of mind, particular selfless giving to others based on the time and circumstance. And that is actually based upon the highest form of devotional service. In other words, or simple to understand, that a teacher can teach the highest level, and he can also teach the bare elementary. It's like $1 is included in $1 million. But not with the mundane attitude that, oh, I'm very high class and I know high things, I don't want to speak the elementary. We see that those who try to poach or utilize the hard work of Srila Prabhupada to attract others to them said that Swami Bhaktivedanta has given you the basics, and now you are cleaned up enough to come and hear from me, and I will give you the higher thing. One of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers actually reinitiated a young disciple of Srila Prabhupada who was sent early on, more or less to avoid the draft into the Vietnam War here in the United States. And Srila Prabhupada was very, very upset. Not so much with the young disciple who was like 19, 20 years old, but with his godbrother. Swami Bhaktivedanta had a temperament to preach to low-class Western youth, whereas I was very high-class, preaching to scholars. Swami Bhaktivedanta chose the archetypal neighborhood, New York's Lower East Side, and went where it was really needed with the potheads and the acid freaks and the bohemians, and he erected intact a piece of an Indian temple, and espousing Sanskrit verses and chanting Hare Krishna with great patience, kindness, and humility. Srila Prabhupada said, I came with no contact, I didn't know anyone, I just followed the order of my spiritual master, and Krishna, my spiritual master, sent you all to me. He was completely dependent on Krishna, put himself out, and the result is to be glorified and to be wonder-strikingly astonished by for all of eternity. Srila Prabhupada's expansion of Krishna consciousness. This most sacred narrative confers extraordinary merit, wealth, fame, longevity, and all the objects of one's desires. I think it's the Dhruv Maharaj section, similar follows Shruti. Even if one is not desirous of these things, this narration is so powerful that it confers upon you these things automatically. Srila Prabhupada is the presenter of the Srimad Bhāgavatam. So certainly all these things were conferred upon him. On the field of battle, it promotes the strength of one's vital organs, making his disciples who were 50 or more years younger than him exhausted. Prabhupada was never He never had jet lag. Who here has flown like from India to here? Do you have jet lag? I have jet lag. It's like a wipeout, you know. Especially like the non-stop flight, 16 hours. That's unbelievable, you know. Or fly from Australia, fly from South Africa or something, and crossing time zones. He'd come in and his Shrutakirti and others would be completely wiped out and say, "What is this? You're all sleeping like dead men, you know. Wake up." I don't have jet lag. One who listens to it at the last moment of his life is transferred to the supreme abode of the Lord, O dear Shonaka. So I just read these verses touching the purports. The next class givers could more deeply elucidate. This verse today under consideration, the personality of Godhead delivered the king of the elephants who was attacked by an alligator who meditated upon the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is the first, I think, 4 chapters of the 8th canto. This is discussed at length. Of course, this was not an ordinary elephant. This was King Indradyumna, who seemingly had committed an offense to, what was the name of that Muni who came in and didn't get a reception? Agastya? You're like dull like an elephant, not giving me a reception, so that you should become an elephant. But actually, this was to facilitate. He was a very great personality, Maharaj Indradyumna. They could go back home, back to Godhead very, very soon. Similar situation was Maharaj Chitraketu, who by the analyzation of the acharyas, they come to the conclusion that he was wrongly cursed. Maybe a little impertinent, but to be cursed to become a sinful demon, that was considered by Mother Parvati to be a little over the top, too much. But the result was that he went back home, back to Godhead. In his situation, he's a demon, but he's speaking the most exalted, or he's expressing the most exalted Vaishnava sentiments. To the chief of all the demigods, the king of heaven, Maharaj Indra, who's astounded at his level of devotional service while acting for all intents and purposes as a terrible demon. Amazing. So devotional service is never lost in any condition of life. That's why we always keep a light on in the window for devotees who go away from following the regular principles, can't keep their vows, become, let's say, in Maya, that once one having tasted the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord, one can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. And the Lord will make arrangement for at the right time for one's good and sound spiritual intelligence to come back. There's the example of the great Acharya Bilvamangal Thakur. Just by getting an indication by the Lord through the mouth of a prostitute that he was attached to, just see, you were coming to try to, with me on such a terrible night, such endeavor, risking your life. If you had this same desire and attachment to achieve Krishna consciousness, oh, what a great devotee you would be. Just kicked in. There's the story of Pururava and Urvasi. They're enjoying so much sex life, and at a certain point his intelligence just kicks in and he becomes 100% renounced. And it's remarked there that this is amazing. He's engaging in non-stop sense gratification. But how did he come to this position of just like instantly dropping it? This is the Lord's mercy. is how powerful is devotional service. Devotional service is eternal and guarantees more opportunity for devotional service, whereas the result of sinful activities is temporary. It's even described here. By hearing this, one can even be relieved of the sin of killing a Brahmin, which Prabhupada remarks in the purport is the most sinful, the greatest sinful activity one could perform in this material world is to kill a Brahmana. One can be relieved of that by hearing the pastimes of the Lord. So, the point made here is that even in an animal, you can perform devotional service. We got a lot of hits on the picture of a kind of a small Siberian husky, getting fed a cookie, a prasadam cookie by the owner, and entitled it, "With great eagerness and anticipation, a dog honors a prasadam cookie." So similarly, the members of the Panchatattva in this Kali Yuga, not considering who is fit or who is unfit, a proper time and place where the distribution of love of Godhead should be performed. They considered everyone was fit, everywhere is a proper time, every place is a proper place, every time is a proper time. Of course, we want to go to the busiest place, and we're doing it at the right time of day. Like, okay, you know what? Why don't we do Harinam for 4 hours from 12 midnight to 4 o'clock? Why don't we do that? And then we can come back from Mangal Arati. I don't think so. So anyway, that's just common sense. At the same time, Prabhupada says we have to make sure that the candidates for conversion are not too disturbing. In Yogeshwar, he was giving his Prabhupada memories again just last year. He had been recorded 30 years ago, and Siddhanta gave him, it was very nice. He was 71 years old, and he's speaking his memories of things that happened when he was 20 years old again. And they had made a program for Prabhupada in a very prestigious concert hall where some of the greatest European performers had performed over the last century or so. And the student radicals there were very upset with Prabhupada's analogies based on the government likened unto the government of the Supreme Lord, and if you don't follow, you will be punished. And anyway, so Prabhupada just said, you know what, let's just have kirtan. They're too offensive to hear philosophy. So the animal is in a more favored position compared to the demigod, who's not a devotee. So we see that simple and what could be considered less privileged people, they might become more interested in Krishna consciousness than people who are, intoxicated by what Queen Kunti describes to be the 4 types of material possessions: wealth, aristocracy, bodily beauty, great intelligence or education. And it is described that if one has these things and at the same time is not puffed up and proud but has a tendency to become a devotee, then he's he's in the most favored position. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. Hare Bo. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So I was just hearing Sri Prabhupada's lecture in the morning.
Hawaii?
in Srila Prabhupada's lecture in the morning,
in the morning.
yeah, in that Srila Prabhupada was saying, this was from on the 6th canto of Srimad Bhāgavatam. So in that he was saying how bhakti is so powerful that a person like Ajamil, he did all kinds of nonsense, but at the time of death, Prabhupada was mentioning one point that Krishna inspired Ajamil to name his son Narayan, he said in this lecture. And similarly, when Yamadutas came, Krishna also inspired him to think of him. Though he called out Narayan, he inspired him to think of Narayan. And he said, when he addressed his son Narayan, immediately the picture of Narayan came in his mind. So though he had practiced bhakti only in his young years, in his youth, but that bhakti actually saved him at the time of death. So that then we can understand how powerful bhakti is. So even if one feels that...
It's interesting to note in Ajamil's connection that he did not go back to Godhead right at that moment. He was taken to Haridwar and given opportunity to purify himself and advance himself. I don't recall if a certain amount of time was said how much he had.
I think it's 18 years or 18 days.
There's the example of a Burmese disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. You've heard this story, that his family was antagonistic, and he had, in their bad association, had given up the principles. And this is after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had left the planet, and he seemingly had come to the end of his life. He had died, seemingly, so much so that they had brought him to the cremation ghat, and right at the time they're about to light the fire, he just wakes up like shouting his spiritual master's name, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and everybody's freaked out. What is this? It's like, is he a ghost? Did he, And then the story was that in this, what do you want to call it, between life and death, I guess he was in a coma, he's taken to the queue of Chitragupta and stand waiting his turn to be judged by Yamaraj, seeing all this fearful situation. And Chitragupta is reading out all his sinful activities, and then Yamaraj says to him, "Have you done any meritorious thing in your entire life?" Of course, he's a devotee, he was performing devotional service in his adult life. But anyway, just to highlight this miracle, it says, I'm the initiated disciple of Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And with that, Yamaraj is like, makes pranam, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta appears. And here's Yamaraj. He's the full and undisputed and singular authority of Yamapuri. He bows and acquiesces, or to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, it says, "Please instruct me, what is to be done now?" And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is chastising his disciple. Why did you give up the principles? Why did you give up chanting? And he's begging forgiveness, he's crying, he's sorry. And he says, you go back down to the earth planet and you take shelter of one of his leading disciples. His name became Madhava Maharaj, formerly Hayagriva Brahmachari. He was one of the very dynamic preachers during Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's manifest presence. You take shelter of him and remain in his mat and never leave. And so he wakes up on the funeral pyre and he says, I'm not going home to my family. I'm dead to you. I don't exist. And he went to Madhava Maharaj's mat, and he's telling him the whole story. Now, interestingly enough, Madhava Maharaj stops him and says, you don't have to say more. I've already been informed. And the story is that this devotee remained there very intensely and single-mindedly performing devotional service in bhajan for another 8 years, and then left his body. Anything more? Yes, so this Fal Shruti is a very wonderful thing. You see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they have nice ones too by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Let's see if I can remember one of my favorites. Yes, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, an illiterate man can recite beautiful poetry, a lame man can cross over the mountains, and a blind man can see the stars in the sky. All right, thank you very much. Shishi Radha Govinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.